3 water signs, 3 archetypes, one of the most emotionally potent alignments, the Grand Water Trine, being activated by the Sun in Scorpio. Welcome back to Soul Symbols, Astrology and Tarot, where we explore the deeper currents of the cosmos and how they shape our inner alchemy and our soul's journey. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into one of the most profound and unifying configurations in astrology, the Grand Water Trine, activated by the Sun in Scorpio, Jupiter in Cancer and Saturn in Pisces. This is a celestial alignment that speaks directly to the depths of our emotional intelligence, spiritual maturity, and our inner purification. But it also holds shadow expressions that can limit growth, restrict our expansion, and justify emotional or ideological contraction. And woven through it all is the Hermetic Principle of Correspondence and the alchemical process known as the Whitening or the Albedo. So let's get started. So what's the Grand Water Trine? I will link above the playlist for the Grand Water Trine, where I've covered the alchemical process and I've covered each of the activations so far. But the water element governs emotion, intuition, memory, and the invisible currents of the psyche, so our unconscious. When 3 planets form a trine in the water signs, Scorpio, Cancer and Pisces, we get this closed circuit of emotional intelligence. And it's like a psychic bloodstream that moves information with ease and flow. One way of looking at it. So the Sun in Scorpio will be illuminating the decks, and that is what is activating this trine once again, that Sun in Scorpio. Jupiter in Cancer expands emotional generosity, and Cancer as a protective wisdom, that wisdom we want to pass on to our children, our young people, or our friends, to keep them safe, protective wisdom. And Saturn in Pisces provides the boundary, the discipline, and the spiritual maturity needed to hold these waters in a meaningful container. Together, they're forming an alchemical triad of depth, of growth, and refinement. So let's have a look at the light side of this trine, the integrated expression of the Grand Trine. So first of all, it provides a mature and steady state temperament. Saturn sitting there in Pisces is bringing emotional stability, not by shutting feelings down, but by offering a compassionate structure, an inner anchor that keeps us steady throughout turbulent waters, storms, challenges out there in the world. This steadiness allows Scorpio's intensity to be held rather than fearing it, and Cancer's nurturing impulses to be expressed without that sense of overwhelm of too much. The next gift is trustworthy integrity and ethical balance. The Sun in Scorpio is given a deep sense of honesty with oneself, with ourselves, and a willingness to look at the truth beneath the surface. Jupiter in Cancer is opening our heart. It's inviting generosity, empathy, and sincere care, all those things associated with Cancer. And together they form the archetype of the honourable guardian, someone who knows the weight of their emotional power and uses it responsibly. And that honourable guardian archetype can be that guardian on the threshold. It embodies those qualities of protector and guide. It can act as a mentor, protector, and the obstacle. On the hero's journey, guardians challenge the heroes, the heroines, to confront their limitations and grow. It symbolises protection and guidance. That archetype is crucial in safeguarding values and standards at key moments in our stories, and it ensures that our journey is transformative and meaning. The obstacles that are imposed ensure that our journeys are never easy or straightforward, but it makes our eventual success more rewarding. So that dynamic between the hero, heroine, and the guardian strengthens other relationships to people around, whether with a mentor offering wisdom or an ally providing support, and even that trickster, Mercury, adding unexpected twists. So that archetype, that honourable guardian archetype, is indispensable in creating, compelling journeys for us, and layered and depth to our journeys. The third gift that this trine is offering us, and it's a more complex gift, is that ongoing work to curb our excesses and inflation. So we have Jupiter that naturally expands, and then Saturn that naturally contracts. When they're working harmoniously, when they're working together, when we are aligned to those archetypes, there's an offer of growth with humility and an enthusiasm that Jupiter brings, tempered by the wisdom and discernment of Saturn, and an emotional generosity without overgiving, without depleting ourselves, without being authentic and generous to ourselves in the process. So this is the ability to regularly ask ourselves, is what I'm doing coming from genuine care, or from the need to be seen as caring? Or is this spiritual growth or spiritual inflation? They're questions when we're on this spiritual journey that are very necessary to ask, to recheck in with ourselves, to see where our actions are truly coming from. It is part of our shadow work and ongoing growth and development. So it's that growth with humility. And then the fourth gift is an appreciation of challenges as character building. So another, really difficult one, and something that often we don't want to admit to. Well, I know I personally don't. So we have Scorpio, that the archetype of Scorpio understands that transformation requires friction. In the tarot, Scorpio is the death card, so that death and rebirth archetype, but Mars constitutes the tower. So transformation requires friction, the ending and beginning, that constant cycle of friction. And Saturn recognizes that discipline and adversity is what forms the backbone of wisdom. It doesn't come from things being amazingly good and easy. We tend to get inflated if that's happening, or we tend to get lazy and So it's that discipline and adversity, yeah, that the wisdom comes from. We seek wisdom in those circumstances. But together they create an archetype of resilient evolution, someone who doesn't fear emotional depth, but sees it as an initiatory path to authenticity. And so working with Scorpio and working with Saturn, that ease and flow between their trine, we can plug into that archetype of resilience and we can grow. We can gain emotional strength, emotional resilience. We can grow physical resilience. You know, our bodies can recover. We can have that mental resilience in the adaptability of our minds to changing circumstances. And community resilience, we can be offering social support or be supported socially. Then that professional adaptability within our workplace and continuity, if we're talking of business, continuity within our organisation or within our own business. And we can get relationship resilience and build strong bonds. So these are incredible archetypes that we can have ease and flow with, and we can plug into with this trine between Scorpio and Pisces. So they're wonderful gifts that are available to us during this Grand Water Trine, and particularly with the sun activating it, where we can move into our purpose, where we can take hold of these gifts, align ourselves to those gifts, do the work within ourselves. But of course, along with that comes the shadow expressions, the pitfalls with any archetypes, with any huge energies. There are pitfalls and there are shadows. So even these harmonious configuration has shadow there, and particularly when water is involved, because the water can dissolve boundaries, it can lull us into comfort, and it can create those emotional feedback loops that can reinforce fear. When we're stuck in our minds or stuck in our emotions because we've been hurt or we've been profoundly challenged or we're overwhelmed, we can get into those loops that take us completely off track. So all that ease and flow is then that shadow energy that is looping around us with ease and flow. So we got contractive fear, and that is what inhibits our growth. So Saturn in Pisces can freeze the emotional life. You know, Saturn is cold, it's winter, and it can freeze it. It can make us fear. Okay, it can make us contract and freeze. Fear can overshadow our intuition. If you've ever been stuck in that sense of overwhelm and fear, it's very hard to access your gut, your intuition. We're often physically tensed up and can't access that. And we can then retreat from opportunities for growth, feeling not ready, not capable, not safe. Any of those things can come into play when there's fear. Then we have that adherence to limiting ideological dogmas. The Jupiter in Cancer can cling on to inherited beliefs, family beliefs, things that we were conditioned with as children, or loyalties and group identities, that group think that makes it very difficult to step outside of what that group identity is, that group that ideological dogma that group holds. And this can go on long after they've served their purpose, those beliefs, loyalties, or group identities. And it can become the emotional justification for, say, staying small. That fear of stepping out, that holding on to those limiting ideological frameworks. And it can also provide a philosophical justification for selfishness. The sun in Scorpio, when it's distorted, can rationalize our self-interest. We have things going through our minds such as my boundaries are truth, my withdrawal with wisdom, my superiority is insight. We need to be careful. I hear a lot of banish negative energy of people will cut off, withdraw, move away, and sometimes we completely miss the character building that is coming through relating to things that may appear at first hand negative. Things are neither one thing or the other as far as I'm concerned. The negativity contains positivity and the positivity contains negativity. It's all light and shadow. But that my boundaries are truth, my withdrawal is wisdom, and my superiority is insight is the shadow of Scorpio's perceptiveness turned inward. And it is used to build walls instead of bridges. Of course, there are times when you have to turn away, but that is after we have tried to relate. We have tried to come to compromise. But there are situations where there is no compromise. So they are the shadow aspects that we have going on with this trine. They are the pitfalls that we can fall into. So contractive fear that inhibits growth, adherence to limiting ideological dogmas, and philosophical justifications for selfishness. Not pretty, but it is what it is. And if we're aware of those shadows, we can ask ourselves the questions, am I falling into these with this water trine? The Hermetic Principles of Correspondence, it is as above, so below, as within, so without. We hear that so often now. And the Grand Water Trine is making this principle vivid and basically undeniable. So we got Scorpio reflecting our inner psychological depths in outer experiences of intensity, transformation, and truth. So we may have circumstances external to us that is bringing like intensity. I know a lot of people are challenged by the intensity, okay, and transformation and the truth. And this will reflect our inner psychological depths or our lack of. So when that comes up, that challenge and intensity or truths that are difficult to swallow, stand and say, how can I transform through this? What am I needing to learn? What am I needing to move on with? To drop? What do I need to see? And Cancer is reflecting the internal emotional climate in the quality of our relationships, our homes, our sense of belonging. Where do we belong? What is home life like? What are our relationships like? It will reflect that emotional climate. And Pisces is reflecting the unconscious patterns in spiritual lessons, in endings, in dissolutions and turning points. So with this trine, life becomes a mirror to us, and particularly with the sun, that mirror is illumined. It really illuminates. The sun is seeking for us to align with spirit, to align with our purpose, to align with life force. So for every emotional pattern within, it's echoed by circumstances without. The world then becomes our teacher, Circumstances become our teacher, revealing where the psyche is purified and where it's still clouded. So that is the beauty of that Hermetic principle of correspondence for us and how we can work with it. And then, of course, we come to the inner alchemy, the whitening, the albedo. I've spoken a lot about the negredo, the blackening. But we're now talking about purification, the washing away of residues, of distortions, and of emotional impurities. So it's not about perfection at all, but it's about a clarity, a transparency, and our emotional truth. The Grand Water Trine is aligning beautifully with that Albedo principle in alchemy. So Scorpio is performing the cleansing by confronting the shadow and illuminating our motives. Cancer is softening and gently rinsing our emotional bodies. It's teaching us self-compassion, to be gentle with ourselves, to cleanse ourselves gently, not to push into guilt, shame and regret. Gently rinsing our emotional body, that's the key. And Pisces is filtering and distills all that experience into wisdom. And it creates ethical, spiritual and emotional clarity. So the albedo is basically asking us to wash away all the stories that keep us small, any fears that are restricting our growth, and any dogmas or ideological framework that define us more than we define ourselves. We should be defining ourselves, not the outward group pressure, peer pressure, familial pressure, who everyone else thinks we should be. We should be defining ourselves. So it's a rebirth in light, not harsh light, but that soft glow of truth after a storm has passed. So the synthesis, when these energies are integrated, this Grand Water Trine will become a path of emotional maturity, responsible sensitivity, ethical integrity, deep intuition, and our compassion grounded in discernment. It will give us growth with humility and transformation without or with much less fear. I'm not sure you can ever be without fear when there's a transformation. It's that archetype of the wise heart. So it's a heart that's been purified, that's been balanced and strengthened through tenderness and trial. And that wise heart is the sage, the wise woman, the crane, the wise man. I think that sage archetype, but also blended with not just logic, research, it's deep wisdom. It's not knowledge, it's deep wisdom through lived experience, deep wisdom through trials, through challenges, through heartache. All these things give us that wisdom. A crone's wisdom or a sage's wisdom is through plumbing the depths, the scorpionic depths of our emotion, of our unconscious, of looking at shadow, of moving into a wisdom of, employing and balancing our logic, our right and left brain, and our emotion and intuition. It's coming into the fullness of who we are from our hearts. If you're working with this configuration personally, or you're just simply observing it in the sky, remember that water is teaching us through reflection. What we see in others, we are being invited to see within ourselves. What dissolves dissolves for our clarity. What expands for our evolution. What challenges you for your alchemical whitening, your return to inner purity, insight and emotional truth. Thank you for listening and watching the video that's been going on, and until next time, a blessing I'm clinging on to. May your waters stay clear, your boundaries sacred, and your transformation guided by wisdom. Bye for now. I'll see you in the next one.